You already know pip. Nearly every command you know still works. Put the word UV in front of any pip command you've ever typed, and the command works. Same flags, same arguments, same shape of output. So why bother at all? Because the install that took pip 11 seconds takes under a second and a half here, and because UV catches things pip waves straight through. Welcome back. This chapter is a translation guide for everything you already know, plus the handful of places where UV is deliberately stricter than pip, and will tell you so. Start with the door that looks exactly like the one you came through. Install, list, freeze, show, uninstall. Every one of them exists, and every one behaves the way you'd expect. There's a tree command too, which pip has no equivalent for and which you'll reach for far more often than you'd guess. Then there's UV-venv, which replaces python-m venv and does two things that command never did. First, it names the interpreter it borrowed so you know what you got. Second, it prints the activation line for the shell you're actually in, which saves a search every single time you forget the Windows spelling. Now the pair that replaces a whole separate tool. If you've used pip-tools, this pair will look immediately familiar. Compile turns a loose list of requirements into an exact pinned one. Sync then makes your environment match that pinned list precisely. Both live inside UV already, which means there's nothing extra to install and nothing else to keep updated. And here's a trap that catches almost everybody the first time. Compile prints its output. Compile does not write a file unless you pass -o. So a beginner runs the documented command, sees the result scroll past, goes looking for requirements.txt, and finds nothing there. Those little via comments are worth reading, by the way. Every pinned line records who asked for it. Via rich means rich needed it. Via -r requirements, that means you did, which turns a wall of pins into something you can actually audit. One more distinction, and it mirrors Chapter 9. UV pip install adds to whatever is already there. UV pip sync makes the environment match the file exactly, which means anything not in that file gets removed. Install is additive. Sync is exact. Reach for the right one. Now the migration itself, which is genuinely two commands. Run UV init on the folder you already have, then UV add -r pointing at your requirements file. UV reads every line and writes each one into pyproject properly. Point -c at your pinned file as well, and UV keeps the exact versions you were already running, because a migration that changes your versions isn't a migration, it's an upgrade in disguise. The mapping is easy to hold. Your loose requirements file becomes project dependencies. Your pinned file becomes the lock file. And any dev requirements file becomes a dependency group, which is what Chapter 7 called the development group. And finally, the places where UV will not do what pip did. The documentation puts it plainly. UV is stricter than pip and will often reject packages that pip would happily install. None of that is UV being difficult. Broken metadata pip waved through becomes a problem you find weeks later, and later is always more expensive than now. Three differences will actually bite you. UV has no --- user install. UV ignores pip, ONF, and the pip index environment variable, using its own settings instead. And UV wants a virtual environment rather than installing into the system Python. And here's one that surprises even experienced people. Upper bounds on requires Python are ignored entirely. If a package claims to need Python below 3.12, UV treats the claim as advice rather than law, because such upper bounds are almost always wrong, and they age very badly indeed. One habit worth changing while you're here. In the pip world, you'd activate an environment and then type pip install. With UV, you can skip the activation entirely because UV finds the environment for you, which is Chapter 8's lesson arriving in a place you didn't expect it. A word on when to use which interface, because having both can be confusing. The pip commands are a bridge, perfect for an existing project, a quick experiment, or a script somebody else wrote. For anything you'll maintain, use the project commands instead, because those give you the lock file. Finally, two things you'll want on day one of any migration. UV pip check reports anything inconsistent, exactly like the pip command from Chapter 0. And UV pip freeze still prints what's installed, so you can compare against the file you started with. Quick check. You run UV pip compile on a requirements file, and then look for the output file. Is it there? Pause the video here and answer for yourself before I say it. Ready? No, compile prints to your screen unless you pass -o. So, to recap, Every pip command you know works with UV in front of it. Compile and sync replace pip-tools outright, and compile prints unless you ask it to write. And UV is deliberately stricter, which costs you a refusal now instead of a mystery later. Last chapter next. Turning what you've built into something anybody in the world can install with one command.